related to that easterly flow. And so we'll start with the rip current risk. It feels like this is an unending risk here. It's just been this long fetch of easterly winds. So high impact potentially here all the way from Tybee Island through much of the east coast of Florida, moderate to high risk. And then you see on the lower side on the west coast of Florida, but also the Gulf Coast. So if you are headed to the beaches, just make sure you are extra cautious. Swim where there's a lifeguard on duty, always. Always a good move. But we have high pressure over the Atlantic, over the U.S. as well. That's helping to drive those easterly winds. Combine that with that disturbance that we have off the southwest coast of Florida, that area of low pressure. It's all helping to keep that flow in place. So that increases the surf action, that push of water. We have a full moon, locally heavy rainfall. You have all these factors going into that flooding potential there. And yes, that tropical wave, and we may not have official development, but you still have the tropical downpours. So keep that in mind. You have them right now from South Florida into the Keys, of course, thinking about everything that's still happening there post-Irma. So kind of a mess. You see over the next few hours in towards the lunch hour, still that heavy rainfall. We're seeing some push to the north with that heaviest of rainfall. So we will get a break probably late dinner hour towards the overnight. But notice that air mass is still in place. You can't rule it out. And it will add up a couple of inches of rainfall, especially from central through South Florida over the next day or two. Stationary front. So you have the focus for that moisture that's being pulled to the north, and a developing system across the plains will all keep that threat for showers in parts of the Ohio Valley, Midwest over the next couple of days into the later part of the week. So right now we have those showers lined up right along that I-70 corridor from central Illinois through Indianapolis into Dayton and Columbus. If you're heading north out of Cincinnati, you are running right into it. We have showers and thunderstorms north of Amarillo and I-40 here, south of Dodge City. Nothing severe, but you definitely have some heavy rainfall pushing to the south with this. So where does it go from here? The next few hours, lunch hour, you still see some of those showers drifting off to the east, but then you see that next round kind of getting going here this afternoon. So heads up Kansas City, up towards Wichita, even Amarillo. Can't rule out more showers and thunderstorms through the day today. And then you see, too, them lining up here overnight tonight towards Milwaukee and Chicago. So there may be some wet road rays for your morning drive. More rain in Puerto Rico. So he's going to file reports there over the next couple of days, bringing you up to date on some of the progress there. Let's talk about the progress of some of the weather systems the next couple of days. We have today this stationary front bringing showers and a few thunderstorms from Indianapolis to Columbus. But we also have north of Amarillo to Kansas City today, showers and thunderstorms, and there'll be heavy rain producers. That'll be a concern even through tomorrow, along with that severe weather threat in that area in red. But you can see all the way up to Minneapolis and Chicago, temps into the 60s and 70s along with that rain. So even on into Saturday, sort of a soggy start to the weekend. We'll be keeping a very close eye on what is happening in the Gulf, along the Gulf Coast and inland. Of course, keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Nate. At that point, we'll see if where the forecast is right now, it could be anywhere from Louisiana into Mississippi, that potential landfall. So watch that one closely. Even on into Sunday, the rain from that system will be all the way up into the Ohio Valley, eventually into parts of the Northeast, getting in on some of the showers and thunderstorms. Notice those temperatures from the 70s and 80s on Monday, still at 70 in Boston, New York, 75 degrees. That is a good 7 degrees or so above average. Meanwhile, across the west, picking up snow, and that continues Monday into Tuesday, finally pushing out of there. But staying cool, Denver 50 degrees, looking good from San Francisco to Seattle, and then by midweek, showers possible again still from the Great Lakes to the Mid-Atlantic. Latest on Tropical Storm Nate, and perhaps officially having that center come on shore, its first landfall.
It does appear that's the case, but if you look at this sort of overall view of the Caribbean and parts of the Atlantic, you could play I Spy and get confused about where Nate really is. Is it that? I don't want to have folks in Miami. I don't want you to think that this is really related to Nate, because Nate's all the way down there.
But you know what? Neither look all that like put together. They could be the same, but
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's not.
And each in their own way is still impactful.
Right.
You don't need a high-end hurricane to have some bad weather and significant impacts. We do think significant flash flooding, potentially life-threatening flash flooding, is a potential for parts of Nicaragua, Honduras, and other areas nearby in Central America, with Nate bringing a lot of heavy rain across the region.
All right, so that's where we think the center is. Max winds at 40 miles per hour. We got another update coming in soon.
Yeah, it just came up, and this is the 11 o'clock advisory. Good call, Maria. 40 miles per hour in the wind speed, steady state from from the 5 o'clock, no change. And pressure right around the same, moving northwest at 9 miles per hour. That is going to likely keep the center over land probably for much of the day today, meaning I don't think strengthening is much of an issue today, although the heavy rain and the impacts, yes, but intensification not likely so until perhaps gets out over there.
All right, so with that forecast in mind, looking at some intensification, nothing rapid that we think right now, but still a tropical storm perhaps as late as Friday, and then things get kind of interesting Saturday into Sunday.
Yeah, this is the new cone, and I'm looking at this for the first time with you. So what I'm noticing is that they'll probably bring a tropical storm to parts of the northern Yucatan, likely on Saturday, very late Friday, early Saturday. And that could still be significant. We know that tropical storm force winds of say 40 to 70 miles per hour can do damage, so can heavy rain. But then likely the center will get out over the Gulf of Mexico, where we know the water is really warm.
All right, so a couple of things that remain consistent here. Still calling for a hurricane at landfall.
This is interesting.
Maybe.
That's right. The Hurricane Center is calling for this to be a Category 1 hurricane at landfall. We think the center somewhere in this zone between eastern Louisiana and parts of Alabama. From what I saw this morning, this seems to be a little bit on the high end of the intensity scale, where much of the guidance is not quite that strong. That's not to say that it can't achieve this, because as I mentioned, along the northern Gulf Coast, and I'll show you in a second, the water's still very warm. But it seems like that the consensus was for a tropical storm rather than a hurricane at landfall. Either way, probably not a significant difference wind-wise, but still impactful rain and maybe some local inundation as well.
All right, intensity forecasts, always a challenge.
Very difficult.
I think this season we've seen a couple of things thrown at us at the last minute when it comes to trying to figure out the intensification of a system. Anything that stands out to you that might throw a wrench in the works of a tropical storm versus hurricane?
No, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there's much of opportunity for one of these high-end hurricanes to pop up out of nowhere. But let's talk about the probabilities of tropical storm force winds, somewhere in the 40 to 70 mile per hour range, say. And those odds are increasing for locations along the northern Gulf Coast. Some of these numbers are 50% chance. The only reason why it's not higher is because we don't know exactly where in here the center is going to be. Once that gets narrowed down, you'll see these probabilities go up, and very near where the center goes, I imagine, we will see tropical storm force winds. We just don't know where that's going to be yet.
Okay, and we know full well that that's sufficient to bring down trees and power lines. So as we mentioned, impactful. But it's sure toasty in the Gulf of Mexico, even this late in the month.
Even this late in the month, right? No, sorry, this late in the season.
Yes.
And even in the northern Gulf Coast, because oftentimes in early October, we can count on the ocean water temperatures or the Gulf temperatures to be relatively cool, not really capable of supporting those really high-end hurricanes. In this case, we don't have that. It's actually warmer than average by a couple of degrees. It's still in the low 80s in the northern Gulf. That may be part of the calculus, thinking that when this thing gets up here, when Nate moves up here, it won't be mitigated so much by cooler waters as it might otherwise be this time of year.
All right, so it's not the only ingredient.
Right.
It can be a very important one, but that might explain that little upping, not upping, but the little boost in that forecast.
Watch it very closely if you live on the northern Gulf Coast.
All right, Dr.